What's up, peeps? In this video, I'm taking part in the $100 challenge. This one is hosted by Sabrina at Sab's Rehabs. And for my entry, I'm doing a full restoration on this vintage Bassett desk that I found at the thrift store a couple weeks ago. If you haven't seen that Thrift With Me video, I'll link it below so you can watch it later. But for now, I'm getting this desk home and getting started. Alright, I'm starting this project like I do with every project, by cleaning, and the first thing I need to do is remove this price sticker. Alright, that's sticky. So, the cool thing about that is that I am testing out this new product today, Super Clean. I'm so excited. They actually reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in giving them a try, and I was like, absolutely. It's really super important to clean a piece before you actually start sanding it or scraping it, just to avoid getting any of that grime and disgustingness down into the grain of the wood. Super Clean comes in its full concentrated form in the spray bottles. So if you're cleaning things like an engine or your wheel wells or even like your grill at home, you would use the full strength. But because I'm doing this on a piece of furniture, I put about a splash into this container of warm water, and now I'm just wiping it across the surface. I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. It says that it's important not to let it dry on the surface, and that means I gotta work relatively quickly here in Phoenix because it is so dry. But actually, I'm kind of in a bonus moment here because the day that I'm doing this is extremely humid, so I'm actually not finding that I'm struggling with this at all. All right, hopefully you can see the extreme difference here. This is like, it is squeaky clean. There's like zero residue left, and there's zero gross residue left from the disgustingness that was the top of this desk before. I'm fully impressed, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep going. I think you guys get the gist, but yeah, Super Clean, I'm a fan. This specific drawer was the most disgusting part of the entire desk, and this is after I dumped out most of the debris that was in here. There was so much cigarette ash and so many burn marks inside this drawer that I kind of think the prior owner might have actually used the drawer as an ashtray. I started with the vacuum, but I did use the cleaner in all the drawers too. Oh, yeah, and you better believe I'm definitely sharing how gross that water looks. This black water is from these two drawers and the underside of this drawer. And this water is from the rinse down, which I'll have to definitely do twice. Definitely wanted to at least test out this Purdy carbide scraper to see if I wanted to include this in my cost or if I should just go with sanding instead. And the thing is, it definitely worked. I mean, you can see it's taken off the finish. That's not a problem. The unfortunate reality is that this top is just so damaged that I'm gonna have to sand it anyway to get it down to flat and smooth. So I opted to not use the Purdy on any other parts of this. So hopefully you'll forgive me if I remove the cost of this Purdy from the entire of the under $100 for this challenge. All right, I'm just gonna like vacuum this off real quick, then I'm gonna actually flip this over so I can fully clean the underside of everything too, and then I am ready to just start sanding. Woohoo! While I get the first drawer sanded, let's talk about the rules of this challenge. The goal is to add up all costs, from the piece to the materials to even hand tools, and try to keep that cost under $100 total. It's definitely a tall order, but I'm doing my best to pull it off. I moved right on to the gross drawer, but I totally flaked on filming the start. Sorry, it's kinda hot out and that's absolutely throwing off my usual routine. But at least I got some of the sanding on this drawer because it's the worst with all those burn marks. And also, the wood on this desk is super dry. That happens a lot to wood furniture in Arizona. In fact, there are a couple issues on this piece I won't be able to fix. At least not without a planer and some other tools, aka not right now. But if you're into helping out, I've got a link to buy me a coffee down in the description. I'm actually saving up all of my coffee cash for a few new tools, and I totally appreciate the support. All right, for full transparency on this challenge here, I am using Howard Feed and Wax. This is a 16-ounce bottle, and right now I am about here. So what I'm going to do is use my Feed and Wax across this entire piece, the drawers inside and out, the underside of the desk itself, and then I'll come back in and I'll just kind of guesstimate how many ounces I used, and then that will be included in the final cost at the end. So I'm applying the Howard Feed and Wax before sanding the face of the drawer for a couple of reasons. First, because the wood now is even drier after all that sanding, and second, because the wax will absorb and it'll start to cure, sealing the surface. That's going to make it so much easier to remove dust or stain later if no, scratch that. When I get sloppy. I'm only doing this to the drawers though. For the desk, I started with it flipped upside down. I'm sanding just about every bit of this piece so I can help to remove that smoke smell and any surface residue. I used my Black & Decker mouse sander and a 120 grit sanding screen. I moved on to all the flat parts, and this mouse sander does a pretty good job of getting all the way into the corners. I appreciate that so much because I don't have to hand sand it all. And it didn't actually take me very long to finish off all of these parts, but by that point, the heat actually forced me back inside. I know, it's not ideal to sand inside, but I only did the hand sanding parts indoors, and I made sure to set up in a pretty well ventilated area. Plus, I cleaned off all the dust as I went. I don't exactly recommend this, but I also don't recommend perishing in the Phoenix summer heat. I took the drawers back into the garage to sand the face. That went really quick, and I did each one like this so I could get an AC break in between, starting the edges inside, then going out to the workshop to do the face. I'm also not worried about the hardware ghosting and that staining you can see because I'm putting the original hardware back on, so it'll never be seen. Huh. I was going to set this up to time lapse to show you how fast it's drying, and I don't even have to. This is already dry. Drying. Yikes, that was real time. Yikes. Getting out of the workshop now. All right, so as you can see, I've finished pretty much everything on the front of this piece, as well as the flat surfaces just about everywhere. And I just wanted to talk to you guys real quick because there are parts on this piece that are actually created out of particle board and not solid wood. And I just want to kind of point those out because if you're new at this or just getting into this line of work, you're going to want to know the difference between those things. And sometimes the only way to do that is doing like this and flipping the desk upside down. So first, let's talk solid wood. These panels here on the front of the piece, this one too, these are solid wood. And I know that because when you come to the underside of the piece and you look at the piece itself, the piece that's on the piece, you see wood graining in here. Particle board, which I've got at least 3 pieces, possibly 4 on this side of the desk. I know that this piece, and this piece at the least are particle board. This panel here on the inside probably is as well. The reason I know that these 3 are is because you can see that there's holes, small little holes. And that's because particle board is just thousands and tens of thousands of pieces of like sawdust and wood that are compressed using glue and then formed into a shape. So for these shapes are panels. Then you add veneer on the top. And then you can probably see this thin line here and this thin line right here on the outside. That is the veneer. I'm gonna do my best not to blow through that while I'm sanding these 3 panels. One of the ways that I am cutting down on costs in this project is by reusing the sandpaper. So when the sandpaper feels like it's burned out on my mouse sander, I know that there's still actually some grit left in that. It's not a lot, but I can get some use out of it. And part of what I'm going to use that for is all the hand sanding on all of this decorative stuff, the legs, the feet, and up the sides where it's got a lot of decorative elements, as well as on these bottom rails in the little channel in the center that was cut out. So I basically just wrap the piece of sandpaper over itself so it gives it a little bit of a grip, and then I just run it with my 2 hands back and forth until I take off as much of the finish as I possibly can. And this is still 120 grit, so I'm gonna be coming back in with 220 grit as soon as this is finished, but I'm just gonna let you watch this enjoyable time-lapse high speed. Yeah, there's not a chance in hell that I'm gonna actually be able to do this. Nope. But I still tried. I put cold cloths on my neck and I turned the fan on, but it just didn't matter. It was already way too late in the day for hand sanding. So instead, I tried to use the orbital, but my initial instincts were spot on. I needed the scraper. The surface of this thing had a thick coating of wax or maybe just years of furniture polish, and it was clogging up my sandpaper. I weighed the risks of pulling out the scraper, but I knew I had to do what was best for the piece, even if it meant possibly losing the challenge. So I pulled out the Purdy carbide scraper again, and I made quick work of the top. But even though I had the cold cloths, the heat was really creeping in at that point. In a last-ditch effort to keep going, I ran a 120 grit paper over the top with the orbital, but it was in that moment that I realized just how much I still had to remove by hand. Not to mention doing it all again with 220, knowing I still had to make this video and how few days I had left until the challenge. Hated to do it, but I had to admit defeat. Hey peeps. Okay, so I don't even want to film this spot, but I just don't have a choice right now. When you last saw me, I was sanding the top of the desk. I was using my orbital, and just before that, you saw me hand sanding the legs. Here's the thing. It's like 104 degrees and about 40% humidity here in Phoenix right now. I cannot work in my workshop. I can't even believe I have to say this, but I'm not actually gonna finish this project for this particular video. It makes me super sad to say that because I really wanted to finish the entire project for the video, but even just talking to you guys, this is my second take on this. I rambled for 10 minutes on the last one. It's so hot out here in my garage that this cloth is not even actually doing anything for me anymore. It's too hot. I hate that that's a reality, but it is. You saw me hand sanding the legs, and that's gonna have to happen. I mean, even if I use a chemical stripper, I still have to come in with sandpaper, and I'm only at 120 grit, which means the entirety of this piece still needs to go to 220 grit before I can even think about staining it. But the good news is I've got some of this project done for you all. I finished all 3 of the drawers. Got those down to 220 and also got the stain on. The good news is the stain that I'm using is a stain and seal. It has a top coat built right into the stain, so I'm not going to be using any top coat on this piece. I'm definitely over the cost of $100, especially with having to include some of the hand tools and that scraper at the end there. Like I said, I mean, I'm trying to get the piece done, and I want to do the best that I can by the piece. I don't want to rush this one. It's a beautiful desk, but like I said, not finishing it for this particular video, but I can give you full cost. That's why I'm saying about the stain, because what I'm doing to the drawers is exactly what I'm going to be doing to the rest of this desk. But it's very likely going to take me a month to actually complete this just because of all the hand sanding, and I just can't do that amount of hand sanding inside my house. But for now, I'm just going to scoot a little to, I don't know, whichever side, probably over here will work. And I'm going to run all of the numbers for the full cost and my cost of what I'm actually going to use on this piece by the time it's finished. That's going right here. So as you can see, I was already over, and I kind of had a feeling I was going to go over 100. Just once I pulled out that purdy scraper, I kind of knew it was going to happen. But at any rate, there are my total costs, and I will show you some final beauty shots of how the desk and the drawers are looking. But I need to get inside my house because it's just way too hot out here already, and I need to cool down. So and I just want to say thanks again to Sabs Rehabs for hosting this challenge. You should definitely go check out everyone's videos. There are so many talented peeps in this playlist. Part 2 of this restoration will be coming in a few weeks, and in the meantime, I'm getting back inside my climate control. I've got some updates on our bedroom makeover and some other furniture flips coming up, so don't forget to subscribe before you go. Thank you all so much for being here and watching, and later peeps!